Here I am, ready to give an introduction to Retro PGF, what we've been doing so far, and a brief update on where we hope to be going forwards. So, very quickly, just looking back at, um, yeah, very quickly, just looking back at how this all kicked off and where the inspiration was. I think the inspiration was the optimism model um, with Gitcoin's easy Retro PGF software, and the idea here was to have a pipeline where we could first look at the network, take in nominations and applications from projects, evaluate their impact through the use of badge holders and domain experts, and then allocate funding through their inputs to kind of reward that impact in a sense and allow them to keep growing. And that's the entire concept behind RetroPGF and see how this was going forward. We're at the end of year one now because just around this time last year, we actually kicked this off. It was, I think, a heavily bootstrapped effort that's slowly gaining some amount of sustainability and stability now, but it's still very, very exciting times. Um, so just some slides going over what each of those steps was. So first of all, taking in your applications, then finding your domain experts who can do this evaluation through metrics, which is still an ongoing process. And then step three, obviously, giving funding to these projects now based on the impact they've created within that time frame. We've been working with 6 months so far, but if there's a conversation to be had about what that time frame should look like, that's one we're always willing to have. And at the end of year one now, we've distributed 500K fill, more than 500K fill actually. And we're always looking for more funders to push that number up even further as part of year two. And future rounds will, of course, have that additional support. And we're really, really looking forward to conversations, maybe driven by us, driven by funders, on how we can improve and how they would like to contribute. So maybe focusing now from just a brief history of RetroPGF to now what we've done as part of round two. It seems like round two has been going on forever, but it's not the case actually. We're very nearly at the end of distribution. Just one last trips list off to go for anyone in the know. But this has been running from around October last year, with the focus of this time running a few experiments and seeing how we can really, really optimize the budget. Really, really optimize the budget to make sure that the operation costs are as few as possible, and that we're, I think, more importantly, experimenting every single round. So, overview on the statistics from this round: we had 300K fill pledged by our round funders, less than 10% of which was actually spent on round operators. And I think I should give a shout out to Gitcoin, Drips, KYC, the KYC team, and the Hypersearch team, because these were fantastic people who were willing to get on a call with us every week and discuss about how we could make this round better and how we could improve the experience for all the applicants involved. And hopefully that experience was a good one. But again, we're open to feedback there. Kind of breaking down how this round looked, we had a showcase round where we actually encouraged projects to now do some public engagement, to get out of their coding caves and now really popularize their work, be it through Twitter or any other social media page. And we actually found a lot of success there. I think there was a brief moment where on Twitter somewhere, I think there was a brief spike in the number of Phil Retro PGF hashtags and Phil hashtags, which was heartening to see. And maybe we can kick that up even further in future rounds. We received over 100 applications and 35 badge holders. Again, an increase in the number of domain experts from last round. 35 badge holders cast their votes, and then that led to 97 projects meeting quorum and being funded. So the experiments that we ran here were, first of all, an entirely new funding distribution system, which I'll talk about very briefly later on. But we also had some community involvement through the Fujaki experiment ran in collaboration with Gitcoin, where we now wanted to invite the broader community to kind of see which projects were in the top 10 or which projects might not have received that much funding. And it was interesting to see the kind of results that came out of there. Something to learn from, I think, already in this round is that the timelines were delayed. Scheduling was a bit here and there around. We were excited about people wanting to be in person and discuss stuff, but I think going forward, that's something we'll try to take into account and see how we can work around other events that happen in the Filecoin and wider crypto calendar. And of course, I think a big question for us is still, and I think I'm on my behalf, I think a bit glad to see is that it's a continuing problem for older retro PGF operations like Optimism, which is how do we make standardized metrics for each of our tracks and each of our trucks for measurement and for badge holders to make the best decisions possible. And that's an ongoing conversation. OSO has kind of helped us and given us some feedback on this. But we're always open to see what kind of metrics we can try out going forward. Um, but I think with all that experimentation and with all those points to improve, of which I've listed but a few, there were quite a lot of good successes also. We had the top 5 projects receive 18% of the round funding. And the image here represents something I think on along the similar lines, but slightly different, which is also we had the top projects also receive the most number of votes from badge holders also, which is good to see because that means a wide number of badge holders were being discerning about how they were voting. And maybe not all of the structure we gave, but parts of the structure we gave the badge holders help them make their decisions better. And we're hoping to improve that going further. This is, I think, a graph that kind of represents what the ideal scenario was, and I think this graph can be improved. But this graph is a direct outcome of round two. You have a tall peak and a longer tail, meaning high impact projects are getting that higher amount of fill allocation, but you still have an overall funding tail that goes out to the ecosystem as a whole, which is good to see because we don't want just a few projects getting funded. We want a lot of projects getting funded, but at the same time, those really, really high impact projects getting that allocation for all the impact that they've had in the ecosystem. And then I think just a quick look at what those projects were. So we had Curio, Lighthouse, Glyph, Spark, and IPNI as our top 5 for this round. And I think interestingly for us was that these top 5 weren't necessarily the top 5 for round one, which is already showing how much the ecosystem is changing and how fast our projects are moving. And it's always exciting to see what kind of projects come out as part of round 3. In terms of round 3 now, I think we've had success in round 2. We're looking to kind of kick off round 3 in the next month or so. And then I think but the focus here is obviously to increase the size of the bot. So, we've been playing around with 300K, but we really want to push it up and see that more funding is distributed to more projects. As part of this, I think, as part of this, we would really encourage any funders or anyone interested in discussing this with us to reach out. I think some interesting propositions we've already had are some new focus areas of interest. So last round, I think there was client onboarding, client stories, and on-chain tracking. And we want to see others. We want to see projects working on even more interesting areas. And I think it's really important to have these conversations with a lot of people because you have that many more touch points in the ecosystem. We only know so many. So we encourage people to reach out to us and discuss this with us. Kind of highlighting drips here in my last 20 or so seconds, I think through this funding platform, I think what we're seeing is, and what we hope to see is the distribution and dependencies that happen in the Filecoin ecosystem. Because just as an example, I think we have projects that are, reliant or have dependencies in other projects. And what we're working with the Drips team, hopefully as an outcome of this round or maybe going forward in the next rounds, is to see a really nice dependency map that kind of links all the different Filecoin projects to one another and really shows, I think, the value of this interconnected ecosystem. But that should be that graph on the left, I think, comes from one of the recent blog posts. But hopefully this time next year or this time in 6 months, we actually have projects that fit some of those nodes and we can put some names to those nodes because I think that kind of dependency map would be really cool to look at. So of course, I think just one final call to action for anyone interested. I think why fund retro PGF? You get to influence the round in ways of badge holder selection, amplify your own brand. You get a hyper cert now, which is, I think, part of round two, which is you get a certificate that says you have supported XYZ projects to this degree, and rewarded their impact, which I think is a nice way of also giving back to the funders. And of course, you have influence over the round. If you have an area of interest, if you have a track of interest, or if you think that certain areas of the ecosystem might need more funding, you have a chance to discuss that with us. We can see how we can make that happen. So please do get in touch. Thank you so much.